People sometimes ask me, what is your favorite verse from the Bible? That's hard for me to answer, because I have a lot of favorite verses from the Bible. A lot of it depends on what I'm going through in a given moment. And then I might say, I really love this verse for this kind of a situation, and I love another verse for another kind of a situation. But according to Amazon.com, the verse most commonly highlighted in the Bible is Philippians 4. It says, don't worry about anything, but pray about everything, and the peace of God that passes all human understanding will guard your heart and mind in Christ. That verse would definitely make my top 10. But I wonder, what verse would you choose if you had to choose your favorite verse? Well, I'll tell you this much. If you're talking to a non-believer, you're going to find out what their favorite verse is, because basic non-believers may know two verses from the Bible that they like to quote, and the verse that you will often hear from a non-believer is, judge not, lest you be judged, right? And when does this happen? This happens usually when we're talking to them about their need for Jesus Christ and telling them that maybe they need to turn from their sin, and they get really indignant and they say, well, doesn't the Bible say, judge not lest you be judged? In other words, will you please go away now? It's their verse that they quote to make you stop talking to them. And the second favorite verse of non-believers is, let him that is without sin cast the first stone. Now, the problem is they totally misinterpret what those verses mean. What is Jesus saying when he says, judge not lest you be judged? Is he actually saying that a Christian is never to judge anyone or anything? Is he saying that we should never make an evaluation of a situation or of a person's conduct, that we should never in any way, shape, or form use our discernment and just sort of accept everyone and everything? No, that's not what he's saying. So let's read the words of Jesus from the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 7, verse 1. Judge not, lest you be judged. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye and not consider the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, hey, let me remove the speck from your eye, and look, a plank is in your own eye, hypocrite? First remove the plank from your own eye, then you'll see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give that which is holy to the dogs, or cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you in pieces. All right, so here's some takeaway truths from these verses. Point number one, if you're taking notes, as Christians, we should be discerning but not condemning. Let me repeat that. As Christians, we should be discerning but not condemning. Again, verse 1, judge not lest you be judged. Now, before we tell you what it does mean, let's find out what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that a Christian loves and accepts everyone in as far as we never comment on their actions or their conduct or their lifestyle. Because the reality is, if you really care for someone, you need to tell them the truth. And sometimes you have to confront people about the sin that maybe they're in that's keeping them from God. The Bible even says, speak the truth in love. Now the problem is, some will speak the truth but not in love. They use the Bible like a weapon to destroy. If the Bible is a sword, and it is, it's not given to decapitate people. It should be thought of as a scalpel to bring healing to people. A scalpel in a surgeon's hands to help a person. But some people weaponize the Bible, and they use truth like a sledgehammer. So it's all truth and no love. But then there are those that it's all love and no truth. They'll just say, oh, that's okay. Oh, I understand. Oh, it's okay with God if you keep doing that. And that is also incorrect. So we have to find the right balance. I mean, if you really care about someone, you'll tell them the truth. So you're going out with one of your friends, for dinner, and they have a giant stain in the middle of their shirt. You might say, did you want that giant stain in the middle of your shirt? Or by the way, you have spinach in your teeth, actually in all of your teeth. They're covered in spinach. What happened, But you tell them for their own good, because that's what friends do. Well, if that's true, should we not tell them if there is sin in their life? Proverbs 27:5 says, open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. If you have some friends that will tell you the truth, those are true friends. Okay, know that. Because a true friend will stab you in the front, not in the back. Does that make sense? See, someone who isn't your friend, they'll to your face, they'll say, you're awesome, you're great, everything's cool, everything you're doing is wonderful, even though they know it isn't. But a true friend will tell you to your face, you know what, I love you, man, and I got to warn you, this could be your downfall, this could hurt you, and because I care about you, I'm going to tell you the truth. Yes, we have to make evaluations and judgments. So when someone says a Christian should never judge, that's incorrect. You say, but we just read, judge not lest you be judged. I'll get to that in a moment. Because there are many verses that actually tell us as Christians to judge, to make evaluations, and to exercise discernment. Look at verse 6. Jesus says, don't give that which is holy to dogs. Now, obviously, he is saying that by a certain person's reaction, they're like a dog. So that's an evaluation. I have to determine who a dog is, and I'll deal with this in a moment. Who is a dog? I mean, what are we talking about here? Someone wearing a flea collar? I don't know. Yeah, so that there's an evaluation. Then Jesus says in verse 15, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing. Well, how am I going to determine who a false prophet is unless I make some kind of a judgment? You see, so there is a place for judgment. The Bible even says judgment begins in the house of God. 1 Peter 4:17 and 1 Corinthians 6:2. Don't you know the saints will judge the world? And if the world will be judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters? So yes, I am to make evaluations and judgments. It's very important. But having said that, what does it mean when Jesus says, judge not lest you be judged? A better translation clears this up quickly. The better way to translate the statement of Christ in Matthew 7 verse 1 is not judge not lest you be judged, but rather condemn not lest you be condemned. There's a big difference. I am to make judgments. I am to make evaluations. I am to use my discernment. But having said that, I am not to condemn a person. I judge for identification, not for condemnation. I need to refrain from hypercritical, condemning judgment. And there are people that love to just judge the whole planet. And in their mind, everyone's motives are always wrong, and they're hypercritical of every person. I heard about an old guy who went over to the preacher's house to watch him fix his roof. The preacher's up there hammering a shingle down, and he looks down at the old codger and says, what, are you trying to pick up some tips on carpentry? The old guy says, no, I just want to know what a preacher says when he hits his thumb with a hammer. So that's just a guy waiting for you to slip up. And to be honest, there are people waiting for you to slip up. Let me take it a step further. There are people that want you to slip up. You know, they're watching, hey, man, you're a hypocrite. You went 1 mile over the speed limit. I saw you do it. You know, they're looking for you to make a mistake that they can hang their doubt on. So the idea here is condemn not, lest you be condemned. We should not be condemning other people. I like a statement of old J. Vernon McGee. You know, he's been in heaven for years now, but he's still on the radio. And one thing I heard him say once was the only exercise some Christians get is jumping to conclusions and running down others. I thought that's pretty good, but he said it. The only exercise some Christians get is jumping to conclusions and running down others, my beloved. Let's get on the Bible bus. Really bad imitation of J. Vernon, but I like him. But that's true. Number 2, our desire should always be to restore, not condemn a person in sin. Let me say that again. Our desire should always be to restore, not condemn a person in sin. We want to restore them. Here's what Paul says in Galatians 6:1 about someone who has fallen spiritually. Brother, if someone is caught in sin, you who are spiritual should kick them while they are down and tell as many people as possible. You ever read that verse? No, you haven't, because it's not in the Bible. I just made it up. But by the actions of some, you would think it is in the Bible. Someone stumbles, hey, kick them when they're down. And tell everybody about their fall. No, the Bible says love covers a multitude of sins. I want to help you get back up on your feet. Remember that commercial that's still out there now? And I'm not making fun, well, a little, but I'm making fun of that person that plays the role of an older person who has fallen. She's like, I've fallen and I can't get up. It's like, I'm not laughing at anyone who's fallen. I'm just saying the way she said is Anyway, and so they have this device that you wear, right? And you push a little red button, which, you have to walk around with that device with a red button, which is, I'm that person that falls a lot, right? But, I'm now seriously, there are people who have fallen and they can't get up. They don't know how to get up. They don't know how to get out of the pit they're in. They don't know how to break free from the addiction they're in. They don't know how to leave the lifestyle they're in. That's where you come in. That's where I come in. As a Christian, you who are spiritual, restore them. So it doesn't say if someone's overtaken in a fall, kick them when they're down. Here's what it does say. If a brother or a sister is caught in a sin, you who are spiritual should restore them gently. But watch yourself, or you may also be tempted. Carry each other's burdens. In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. By the way, this phrase, caught in a sin, implies it was not premeditated. It's a person who lowered their guard and they were caught like an animal in a trap. It wasn't intentional, but they messed up, and it is our job to restore them. How? Gently. In fact, the word restore means to set a broken bone or put a dislocated limb back in place. So if you've broken your arm, I'm not going to manhandle you and twist it back into its proper place. I'm going to probably try to get you to a hospital as quickly as possible, have a professional help you, but I want to assist you. See, this is what we want to do, restore. The classic example of this is the woman caught in the act of adultery. She's grabbed by the religious leaders who are setting a trap for Jesus. They throw her down at his feet, and they say, the law says she should be stoned. What do you say? Jesus looks around and he says, and he bends down and he writes something in the sand. And he stands up and says, let him that is without sin among you cast the first stone. The Bible says they left from the oldest to the youngest. So there's some connection between what he wrote in the sand and them leaving from the oldest to the youngest. What do you think he wrote in the sand? I guess he may have written the name of one of the people and maybe the sin they were committing, maybe their so-called secret sin that they thought nobody knew about. Whatever it was, it cleared the house out quickly. So all these self-righteous religious hypocrites leave, and Jesus turns to the woman and says, woman, where are your accusers? He uses an interesting word for woman. It's a word of respect, like ma'am, lady. She'd probably never been called that before. Ma'am, where are your accusers? She says, I have none, Lord. He says, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. See, that's what you do when someone has fallen. Your objective is to restore them again. Number 3, I cannot see a speck in my friend's eye if I have a telephone pole in mine. And by the way, I think Jesus is using humor here. I think Jesus used humor all the time. And I think Jesus smiled a lot and laughed a lot. Well, can you prove that biblically? Well, I know children were drawn to him. And I see humor in many of his teachings. Now, the Bible does say he was a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. But that's not speaking of his general demeanor all the time. That's specifically talking about that moment or period of time when he was headed to the cross of Calvary as the weight of the world was on his shoulders. But in general, I think Jesus was quick to smile, and he would use humor to make a point. Certainly a camel going through the eye of a needle was a humorous illustration, and this is as well. Matthew 7, verse 3. Why do you look at a speck in your brother's eye and not consider the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, oh, let me remove the speck from your eye, and look, a plank is in your own eye? Now, by the way, the word that is used here for plank is a very large piece of wood, and the word used for speck would be like a piece of sawdust. So let me update this translation. Why are you looking for a tiny piece of sawdust in your friend's eye when you have a telephone pole in your eye? And I think the people probably chuckled, yeah, we get it. And so he's making a point that we're so quick to go after minutia in one Christian's life when we are guilty of a lot worse in our own life. You show me a condemning, hyper-judgmental person, and I don't think that's a sign of spirituality. I think that is a sign of possible sin in their life. And it's interesting because the word that is used here would imply that the reason I'm so quick to see it in your life is because I have a lot more of it in mine. Okay? So careful what you're always criticizing people for. Maybe that's your issue. Maybe you're projecting your sin on them. Well, you know, that person's so proud, and maybe it's you. Maybe you're describing yourself, actually. And maybe the reason you're so quick to see it in someone else's life is because you're so familiar with it in your own life, you see? And so that's what Jesus is saying here, is don't be that person. So first, remove the plank from your eye, verse 5. And so the idea here is not that I should not try to help somebody who has, some sawdust in their eye or a sin in their life. But before I can do it, I have to get it out of my own life. He says, first remove the plank. First confess your sin. You know, forgiven people should be forgiving people. And if you're so quick to judge others, here's my question for you. Are you prepared to be judged with the same type of judgment you give to others? Because that's exactly what Jesus says. Verse 2, with the judgment you judge, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. So be careful. Point number 4. You know, people sometimes ask me, what is your favorite verse from the Bible? That's hard for me to answer, because I have a lot of favorite verses from the Bible. A lot of it depends on what I'm going through in a given moment. And then I might say,